Walters. Taxi.
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Dr. Sky, there's a very important story that you and I need to discuss and that I know you've done a little work on. A military aviator describes an object unlike anything I had ever seen in the latest drop of UFO declassified files. These files, they tease us because we're told we're getting declassified files and then they drop, and for some reason we're not very excited. Dr. Sky, tell us a little bit about this story and tell us about the files in general.
Well, good morning, and welcome to the dog days of summer here in Phoenix, as you mentioned before.
Oh, yeah, but before we get what is your air conditioner in Phoenix set at, sir?
I set it at 78, and there's no science behind it, but I think I'm going to lower it, not only by listening to you, but by the environment, what's happening here. We're in the throes of monsoon season. We were just pounded a few hours ago. We had no rain here for 100 days. It's hard to believe, right, Walter?
Wow.
And now we got a deluge, and so I think what I'm going to do is lower that because the humidity, which we call the dew point out here, is terrible. It's like in the 60s, so it's like a tropical rainforest, and it's not a forest. It's a desert. But there you go.
Now, Dr. Sky, talk to us a little bit about this story, and I'm very interested in your general impression of the UFO news drop out of Washington.
It's interesting, Walter. The cosmic Watergate, as many people describe it, still simply continues. Lots of teasing information. Some I think is pretty good, but in this particular analysis, we're looking about many, many files that have been sent out to us. Some 14 reports, 19 videos, 4 audio files, and 3 images from multiple agencies, including the Pentagon, NASA, the CIA, the FBI, and interestingly enough, the Department of Energy. And the highlight, just in quick summation, is a pilot reporting that looking down from the cockpit of their military aircraft, see this rather strange-shaped object in that of a rectangular form, moving at incredible speeds, and then doing some kind of a zooming event. Now, we've talked about, and many people are probably realizing that there's another type of object, which are these tic-tac devices, whatever they may be, that have the ability to go so-called underwater, shoot up to maybe 80,000 feet and do things that no aircraft can. So in the same vernacular, we've got the same kind of situation here, but no positive identification or description beyond that of what they're showing you. I mean, the cosmic Watergate, as I mentioned before, continues. We're getting somewhere, but obviously not really, I think, where we would be. I mean, don't you think, Walter? It's well overdue. I mean, that's the most ridiculous thing anybody could say, that we want to get the answer to this, but we're really not being told much. We're being teased with the little filet mignon on a hook. Some of it's good, but it's still, in my opinion, very well controlled, and the real answer is yet to be given to us, hopefully someday.
Do you think that we weren't paying attention? Donald Trump said that, and without hyperbole, this is a man who lives in hyperbole. He did not announce that he was releasing these files with excitement, drama, you won't believe what you're going to see. He said, well, some people might be interested in this. That's exactly what he said. Well, I know some people might be interested. And what did he say he was going to release? He said he was going to release the unidentified flying object files. Unidentified. And that's what he's released, the unidentified files. Hey, we don't know what this is either. Why don't you look and see? He did not say he was going to release the identified object files.
Good distinction, Walter. You're absolutely right. So again, the tease continues. And I've been doing a lot of research on this, and I think people out in the listening audience, far and wide, might benefit from this. There's a website that people can go to called governmentattic.org. And why I like it, it's a website that has a lot of compilation of documents that were from Freedom of Information reports. And if people really want to do a deep dive into this kind of stuff, I think it's interesting because they have the Latin phrase videre licet. In simple English, it means it's permitted to see, which is kind of an interesting twist on this. So again, we really don't know what's going on here. It's an attempt, I think. You're right. The president correctly said this. Here's information that we really don't know. You make your mind up about it. But the cosmic Watergate, as I keep saying, the great Stanton Friedman, the physicist, we knew him. I knew him very well. If he was still alive today, I'm sure he would be aghast at the lack of real details on many of these things, because how can you have, Walter, objects that literally can move like the shape of a tic-tac mint, but maybe 40, 50 feet in length, do these amazing type of dynamics in the air? And if the aliens did indeed, these recovered craft that David Grush claims that we have in congressional testimony, if we've reverse engineered these things, well, my God, that's a pretty good, technique, uncomplicated things like that. But they're still some of the biggest mysteries out there. And people scratch their head going, well, give us more. We want the answer. And the word is full disclosure. But I don't think that's coming anytime soon. But I don't want to be negative. I just want to be honest.
Dr. Sky is on the Red Apple Audio Networks every Saturday and Sunday night. He's a great broadcaster. He has a much better voice than I do, very smooth, very professional. He's out of Phoenix, which means it's about, 120 degrees where he is right now. But he has studied UFOs, UAPs for decades. He understands it better than anybody. One of the things that puzzles me about the government release is we keep getting infrared film. We keep getting infrared video. Could we please see the color? Why aren't they releasing the color films? Do you have any idea?
No, I don't. And again, it's this tease that they give us with this information. And again, you're right, the president, not to be overly repetitive, Walter, you said that. He wasn't telling us we know exactly what these things are. We're still going into the unidentified column. But a long time ago, I've had the privilege and honor of working and visiting with people like Betty Hill of the great September 1961 event, where her and her husband had a most magnificent...
Betty and Barney, right? Betty and Barney Hill. Okay,
absolutely.
They were the first abductees I ever heard of. And you actually knew them?
Well, I knew Betty well. I mean, her husband had passed on. But what's interesting about this, people can do a deep dive into it. They went to this psychiatrist afterwards. I mean, I'm making this very short here.
Okay.
Their abduction experience was 3 individual grays, as she described them, and non-communicating. It was like telepathic communication. And they pulled both of them into separate rooms, as she alleged, under this hypnosis. And her husband told the very same story. And what's really interesting about this, yes, I knew her for years up in New Hampshire, would visit her on summers when I lived in the New York area. And she went to her grave a few years ago, obviously with one of the most incredible stories as they're driving, the husband and wife, from Montreal back in September of 61 along the dark highways of New Hampshire. But there was a television movie, to make this really short. I forget the exact name of it, but Betty Hill was played by the actress Estelle Parsons. And this is even more incredible. Her husband, Barney, was played by none other than James Earl Jones. But that movie bothered me because it was the first time, and I was a lot younger, this is in the 70s, the visualization of those aliens kind of just bothered me. It kind of stuck in my mind that, wow, look at what she saw and what they saw. And I'm very close to Travis Walton, of course, of the Fire in the Sky. We're kind of neighbors up in the mountains where we have another location. And we've traveled with the Coast to Coast people for years. I'm not the guy that should be there on the stage, per se, because I've had no alien abduction, allegedly. But Travis's story, I think, is even more prolific. If people are not familiar with him, the movie Fire in the Sky, and his role is played by the actor D.B. Sweeney. That, at the very end, not to be a movie spoiler, absolutely just terrifies people when they see what these creatures look like and what he alleges happened. So something's happened to these people, and many, many more come to testify that this whole subject of the cosmic Watergate needs to be given to us, and hopefully I'm going to be an optimist that we'll get to learn more about the real truth behind all this. What do you say, Walter? I mean, you talk about this all the time, too, with great
I believe that I'm always conflicted that there are people who claim to be abducted, and they're very sure about this, and yet we do not hear about NORAD saying we saw a ship.
Sure.
We do not hear the flight controllers out of LaGuardia saying, what the hell is that? We don't hear the guys out of O'Hare saying, what is that? There never seems to be confirmation, not about the abduction, but about a ship, a giant ship capable of abducting them, which leads me to 2 possibilities. One, in my opinion, they are struggling with a childhood trauma. They're struggling with a doctor, a parent, and a scary uncle who did something wrong.
Very plausible.
And they have blocked it in this way, and then our culture has given them this script that they can use. The second thing is that for whatever reason, and this is the X-Files explanation, for whatever reason, in their bedroom, in their home, in their car, they were stopped by somebody from Earth, a government official, a scary person who chloroformed them and took them away, brought them to an examining room at a hospital in a bunker, examined them for whatever reason, impregnated them for whatever reason, and then returned them to their car. That it was very much an earthly, horrible event of abduction. That would meet all of the criteria they had as well. Not hard to put on a gray suit. Not hard to put on a Halloween costume and have somebody who's stoned out of their minds looking at you.
Very plausible, very much likely.
And they all have blackout problems. Some of them remember it. I have a guy on my show regularly, Dave Scott, who's a terrific contributor. But Dave says he's been abducted maybe 4 times, maybe 5, maybe 6. He doesn't remember all of them. But the abduction story is the same as every other abduction story, which started with Benny and Barney Hill. Those are my 2 theories, because I'm always stumped by the lack of a confirmation of a giant craft taking somebody by a laser beam into it. Where there has to be confirmation of that part.
I agree. And I think Travis would be a great guest on your show, because here's a man, and again, I'm not his agent or anything like that. I'm a friend of his, but what I like about Travis is he's a simple person who I wonder, why would somebody go to that extreme to talk about an event that happened to them? He's a lumberjack. He worked in the mountains, the Mogollon Rim. And that short story, of course, that I'll share here is that one day they're out there doing their logging job, and they all get back in the truck except Travis is standing on the hilltop, and they're, come on, Travis, come back in the truck. We're leaving after a long, hard day work. And it's November, and it's cold, and it's up there in the mountains, and they say, let's go. And he's standing there kind of frozen. And as the story goes, he could tell it better than I could. He lived it. Some type of a beam or something, froze him in position, and he's gone. There's a craft above it with all these lights. And I always wondered, if UFOs are there, why do they need all the Christmas and holiday lights on them? If they're that stealthy, why do they need all the colored lights? But apparently, he was missing for days. And his story, his book, it's just amazing. It's an eye-opener. And he makes not a living talking about this, but he's a pretty humble guy. Why would he go to that length to go through this? He didn't need to do that. So I think his story, to me, is an interesting one to research.
Dr. Sky, brilliant host, Red Apple Audio Networks every weekend. Do you have a question for Dr. Sky on this amazing story? Here's the number, 800-848-9222. Let's give Pete something to do, 800-848-9222. About the CERN machine, about the CERN, what is it called? What is it, a CERN? What is it?
Well, it's a particle accelerator. And what's really spooky about it is that we found something, at least the physicists have found something, which a long time was predicted, that in the atom, there's this particle that people won Nobel Prizes for called the Higgs boson. And really, in simplest terms, it's something that has the ability to, how do I say this in simple terms? It has some sort of an attractive force to nature and stuff in the universe. But what that thing is doing, on the conspiracy side, people have said, well, if they keep firing that thing up, who knows? Maybe they'll create some sort of a black hole and, just destroy the whole planet. But I believe, I don't have total, control over the information. I believe they're either shutting down for a while or they've restarted. I don't know the exact thing, but that's an amazing story there, that they have this gigantic particle accelerator where you can create, even things like antimatter. But let's not get too overboard on this, because even the smallest amount of antimatter that they can create, per se, lasts for an infinitesimal amount of time. But could you imagine, Walter, if you could create an opposite force, which we believe exists in the universe? There was a physicist called Paul Dirac who in the 1920s theorized that we could have this thing in the universe, that was called antimatter. And nowadays we're studying something called gravitons, which is obviously something that we really haven't detected. We hope to. But imagine if you had a small, tiny bit of antimatter, and if it collided, let's say you and I, Walter and Steve, Dr. Sky, have antimatter particles of ourselves out in the universe, we would simply, if we came together, have an explosive energy force that's more like Star Trek, but on a mega scale beyond our comprehension. So that's what that particular, among other things that they're doing. Particle physics is another world. I'm not a quantum physicist by any means, but I can tell you that's the stuff that's really bizarre, don't you think?
Dr. Sky, there's many theories online, which of course are all true, yes, that the particle accelerator, this CERN machine,
right,
was on for quite a while and was turned off recently. and that while it was on, it affected our universe. It affected us. It sent us into another universe. It sent us into another dimension, a different.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Different timeline. Mm-hmm. And then you start to be asked, okay, so what do you remember about 2020? And I'm like, I don't remember that much. And have you found jumps in time? Have you found things that have happened in your day? And then you look at the clock and go, I had no idea that much time passed. And now they said that the particle was turned off. The machine was turned off last week.
Okay.
And have you felt a difference in the world, in your sensibilities, in your life?
Mm-hmm.
Could it do that?
Don't know. I mean, you could look at it this way. If the arrow of time, and this gets really deep here, is supposedly an arrow that moves forward, but we cannot go backwards in time. But if that has the capability, let's say it did, strangeness goes into black holes, and not to go, compromise the whole time here on this, but I think it's an interesting phenomenon. John Wheeler, a physicist at Princeton University, was one of the first to actually theorize that there were these things in space, we call them things, that nothing can escape because of all the four forces in the universe. We go back to our basic studies. These four forces are electromagnetism, which we're all familiar with, electricity, magnetism, the strong and weak force in the atom, which would take hours to explain, but it's something that goes into the nuclear force. But this is the most bizarre one, Walter. Gravity is the last one, but it's the weakest of all the forces. But if somehow that type of device could spin fast enough or do something, black holes, if you look out in the universe, even Stephen Hawking said at one time people were saying nothing can escape a black hole. But now, even in his last words, Stephen Hawking said, this sounds bizarre. He said that black holes can actually have hair. Now, don't change the channel when I sound like I'm crazy here. His theory on this was that black holes can leak, and thus, as if you had a bald head, where you thought, obviously, there's no escaping the brains inside, it's a solid component, that even he said that black holes have the tendency to leak, which means one thing, that they could permeate the universe, little tiny ones, and not to scare people, who are trying to listen to the show. But on the other side, Walter, it could be something where little tiny black holes permeate the universe. And this also ties into maybe some of the things that they're working on, and now maybe shut it down, as you said, where they're getting into what I call maybe some dangerous territory. Who knows? But I'm sure particle physicists that would call in might take exception to what I said, and they would say, oh, no, everything's running smoothly, and we're getting great research. And I believe they are. But isn't that a big mystery? Who the heck knows what would happen if that thing got out of hand, or even did, as you mentioned, theoretically changed our whole view of the universe, where we had missing time and didn't recognize it, but don't know what the heck happened. We could be in a whole different dimensional plane.
Dr. Sky, every Saturday and Sunday night, Red Apple Audio Networks with Tom. Tom, welcome to the Red Apple Audio Networks with the legendary Dr. Sky at 800-848-9222. Hello, Tom.
Good morning, Tom.
Good morning. All right, there's something that I was wondering about. I saw the show a long time ago about Saturn, and the show said Saturn didn't always have its rings. So
Correct.
I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about that.
Sure. No, it's
Thank
very
you,
good,
Tom.
No, it is a great question. Planets, that have satellites. If any satellite, in this particular case in Saturn, Tom, one of these moons got too close to the planet Saturn over the course of its time, how many billions of years it's been there. And when that happens, there's a thing, if you look it up, it's called Roche's limit. And what that means is the tidal forces that are inside these planets that hold them together, the gravity of the main body, which is the big ball of Saturn, this would cascade to the surface area of, let's say, another satellite, and it would disrupt. And this is interesting because the rings of Saturn, we had years ago on other shows that I've done, one of the lead team of the Cassini spacecraft, and I had asked them that question. I said, where the heck did the rings of Saturn come from? And the answer was, and still today, is that it definitely was some sort of a moon or maybe a couple of moons that got too close. So that would happen to the Earth's moon, too. If the Earth's moon got within a certain distance, I can't calculate it now, if you just look up ROCHE, Roche's limit, it's a distance away from an object that it would have what they call tidal instability. And I don't want to get too scientific here. In the simplest way, it was probably another planet. But here's the problem with Saturn's rings. They're very thin. They may be maybe 100 yards thick, and they may consist of particles, Tom, all the way down to the size of little things, maybe the smaller than your fist, up to the size of an SUV. But how about this? Of all the planets in the solar system, Saturn, which we thought Jupiter had the most moons, Saturn now comes back to the one that takes number one on the chart. So I hope my answer is pretty simple. And yeah, it was probably another moon that got too close. But the sad part is, in about 300 million years, Saturn's rings are going to disappear. So you better take a look at them while you can, right?
Dr. Sky, every weekend, Red Apple Audio Networks. This weekend, what are you going to be sharing about?
Well, we're going to get into a deep discussion as we talk about earthquakes. We're going to be talking about the mechanisms behind that. And then we also talk on occasion about American exceptionalism stories. And I have a gentleman who's going to come on and talk a little bit more. I know it may seem a little off-kilter to some of the concepts that we just talk about astronomy, space, aviation, and weather. But my time in service in the military and a little bit of law enforcement, I've always been to what this radio station stands for, truth, justice, and the American way. But as we move deeper into the traditional subjects, we're going to be continuing to talk about the whole subject of geoengineering, AI, and what's really going on from the world of science and the whole side of it. We try not to get into political discussions, but then we go into celebrities that we'd like to bring on the air. We've been friends over the years with Billy Mumi from Lost in Space. We had so many interesting interviews with people, so we try to bring them to the forefront.
Did you ask Billy about Angela Cartwright?
You know, I never did get a question to ask. I mean, never had an opportunity to ask him about that. But it's amazing. They still travel together on road shows. Sadly, June Lockhart's passed. I mean, what a beautiful interview that was with her.
Yeah.
I mean, she was so kind. And I'm sure you've had the privilege and honor of speaking with many of these people. But we try to mix it up a little bit. And it's all about this, the great mysteries like you talk about, and adding to the conversation, all these great mysteries in the universe, getting a little bit away from the political realms of the day and talking about what we find out is the mysteries. And since there's really no apparent answers, like to what we call cosmic Watergate with the whole UFO phenomenon, I'm positive and hope that one day we'll be told the real truth. But some say, I think it was Representative Burchett, he said he was come out of one of those SCIF meetings, right, Walter?
He
said, oh, my God, you probably don't want to know what we heard. Who knows what that is?
Yeah, I know what that is. I think he's a phony. I think his job was to be a distraction. I think he was doing his job because, wait a minute, you're a congressman. Why don't you walk down the hall, pound on somebody's door, and demand some answers? Mm-hmm. Wait, that's my opinion. Dr. Sky, thank you, sir. Thank you very, very much for joining us from an overheated night in Phoenix. Always good to have Dr. Sky with you this weekend on the Red Apple Audio Networks.